Rome had already decided what Cleopatra was. Beautiful, dangerous, a distraction, the kind of woman powerful men lose themselves over. For more than 2,000 years, history repeated the story. There is only one problem. The story makes no sense, because while Rome was writing about her beauty, Cleopatra was controlling grain supplies that fed Roman cities. While Rome was gossiping about her relationships, she was financing military campaigns. While powerful men believed they were using her, she was quietly making herself impossible to remove. History called Cleopatra a seductress. But seduction does not keep a kingdom alive for 21 years against the most powerful empire on earth. Something else does. And once you see it, you'll start noticing the same strategy everywhere. In politics, in business, in careers, in every room where power exists. Because Cleopatra wasn't building influence, she was building dependency. And there is a difference. Imagine being born into a kingdom everyone expects to disappear. That was Cleopatra's world. By the time she was born in 69 BC, Egypt was no longer the empire that had built pyramids. The center of power had shifted. Rome was rising. Kingdom after kingdom was falling under Roman influence. The pattern was becoming predictable. A ruler asks Rome for protection. Rome provides protection. Rome becomes indispensable. The kingdom disappears. Cleopatra grew up watching this happen. And unlike most rulers, she understood the real danger. The danger wasn't Rome's armies, it was dependence. Because dependence changes the balance of power long before a single battle is fought. While other rulers studied military strength, Cleopatra studied leverage. While others looked at armies, she looked at systems, trade, resources, food, money. The invisible things that powerful people depend on without thinking about them. And that may have started much earlier than most people realize. Picture Alexandria, the greatest city in the Mediterranean, the largest library in the ancient world. A young girl sitting among scholars 3 times her age, not studying the books, studying the people reading them, learning languages, listening, observing, watching how influence moves through a room, because every language reveals a different way of seeing the world, and the person who speaks your language gains access to your blind spots. Cleopatra eventually learned many languages. More importantly, she learned how people think. That skill would become far more valuable than any army she could ever command, and she would need it sooner than she expected. At 18 years old, she inherited a throne. Within a few years, she would lose it. Exiled, powerless, cut off from her own kingdom. No army, no palace, no institution willing to save her. And that raises the question that changed history. How does a woman with no power gain access to the most powerful man in the world? The answer begins on a harbor in Alexandria. At night, with a carpet, and one of the most misunderstood encounters in history. Alexandria, 48 BC. The most powerful man in the world was sleeping inside Cleopatra's palace, and Cleopatra wasn't allowed to enter it. Think about that for a moment. The rightful ruler of Egypt had become a stranger in her own kingdom. Julius Caesar had arrived in Alexandria pursuing his rival Pompey. Pompey was dead, Egypt was unstable, and Caesar now found himself standing in the middle of a royal civil war. To most people, this looked like a crisis. To Cleopatra, it looked like an opening. Power has a strange effect on people. The more powerful someone becomes, the more difficult it is for others to reach them. Layers appear, advisors, guards, gatekeepers, protocols. Entire systems designed to prevent unexpected people from getting close. Most ambitious people respond by pushing harder against those barriers. Cleopatra chose a different strategy. She looked for the gap, because every system has one, and the strongest walls often have the most predictable blind spots. According to the ancient accounts, Cleopatra had herself wrapped inside a carpet or a bundle of bedding and carried into Caesar's private quarters. Most retellings focus on the drama, the surprise, the romance. They miss the genius. Because the carpet wasn't the strategy. The carpet was simply the delivery mechanism. The strategy was understanding how Caesar saw the world, and more importantly, how he didn't. Cleopatra had studied Caesar long before she met him. His victories, his ambitions, his reputation, his ego. She understood that Caesar saw himself as a man destined for greatness, a collector of extraordinary things, a solver of impossible problems, the kind of man who believed he could see opportunities others missed, and that created a blind spot. The people most confident in their ability to read the world often become the easiest to surprise, not because they are unintelligent, because they stop expecting to be surprised. Cleopatra understood this. She didn't arrive as a threat. She didn't arrive as a rival. She didn't arrive demanding power. She arrived as something Caesar had already decided he understood. A young woman from a declining kingdom, asking for help, and that assumption did something remarkable. It lowered his defenses. The moment someone believes they understand you, they stop studying you. That is one of the most important psychological principles in history. The greatest advantage is not being underestimated. The greatest advantage is knowing you are being underestimated and deciding not to correct it. History remembers the moment the carpet unrolled. Imagine it, a private chamber, the most powerful Roman alive, a bundle placed before him, then movement, a figure emerging, not desperate, not frightened, not pleading, prepared, deliberate, calm. For Caesar, it must have felt spontaneous. For Cleopatra, it was anything but. She had already mapped the encounter before it happened, every word, every perception, every assumption, because she understood something that would define the rest of her life. Access is not granted to the strongest person. It is granted to the person who understands the gatekeeper. And that night, Cleopatra gained something more valuable than an army. She gained proximity. Within days, Caesar backed her claim to the throne. Within months, she was ruling Egypt again. Most histories call this seduction. That explanation is comforting, because it reduces strategy to attraction. It makes the outcome feel simple. But simple explanations rarely explain complex results. The real question is not why Caesar helped Cleopatra. The real question is, what did Cleopatra offer Caesar that no one else could? Because whatever happened in that room, it was powerful enough to change the future of Egypt. And the answer had nothing to do with romance. It had everything to do with leverage. And that's where the story becomes truly dangerous. Most people believe power belongs to whoever commands the largest army. History repeatedly suggests otherwise. Because armies are expensive, empires are expensive, powerful men are expensive, and all of them depend on something: food, money, trade, legitimacy, systems. The visible part of power is rarely the most important part. The invisible part is. And Cleopatra understood this better than almost anyone in the ancient world. Imagine standing on the Nile at dawn, hundreds of grain barges moving slowly north. Their cargo seems ordinary, almost boring, yet hidden inside those barges was one of the greatest sources of power in the Mediterranean. Because grain is not food. Grain is time. Grain is stability. Grain is political survival. An army cannot march without it. A city cannot function without it. An empire cannot endure without it. And Egypt produced enormous amounts of it. While Roman generals were thinking about battlefields, Cleopatra was thinking about supply chains. While others measured power in soldiers, she measured it in dependencies. And that difference changed everything. This is the question most people never ask. What exactly did Cleopatra give Caesar that nobody else could? The answer wasn't affection. The answer wasn't beauty. The answer wasn't companionship. The answer was certainty. Egypt gave Caesar access to resources he could not easily replace: grain, revenue, trade routes, strategic stability in the eastern Mediterranean. Things armies could seize temporarily, but only governments could sustain. Cleopatra wasn't offering Caesar support. She was offering infrastructure, and infrastructure is far more valuable than support. Support can be replaced, infrastructure cannot. This is where the real psychological principle emerges. Most people seek protection. Cleopatra built leverage. There is a difference. Protection depends on someone else's decision. Leverage changes the decision itself. Protection says, "Please keep me." Leverage says, "You need me." Only one of those positions is stable, and Cleopatra knew it. Every ruler around her sought Rome's favor. Many received it. Most disappeared, because favor is temporary. Dependency is durable. People protect what they need, not what they like, not what they admire, not what they pity, what they need. That distinction explains far more of history than most people realize. Then Mark Antony entered the story, and Cleopatra did something remarkable. She repeated the same strategy. Different man, different circumstances, same architecture. Antony needed resources. Egypt had resources. Antony needed legitimacy in the East. Cleopatra possessed legitimacy. Antony needed funding. Egypt possessed wealth. History remembers romance. Strategists remember incentives. Because beneath every famous relationship in Cleopatra's life sat the same hidden structure: mutual dependency, not emotional dependency, strategic dependency. There is a reason this pattern appears again and again throughout history. The strongest alliances are rarely built on trust. They are built on aligned interests. Trust is fragile. Interests endure. And Cleopatra understood how to align interests better than almost anyone of her age. This is why I think history misunderstood her. History asks, how did Cleopatra influence powerful men? The better question is, how did Cleopatra make herself difficult to remove? Those are very different questions. Influence can disappear overnight. Necessity is harder to erase. For more than 20 years, Cleopatra transformed Egypt from a vulnerable kingdom into something far more valuable: a partner, a supplier, a stabilizer, a source of resources Rome increasingly depended on. She wasn't trying to become powerful enough to defeat Rome. That would have been impossible. She was trying to become expensive to lose. And that may be the most important lesson of her entire life, because the safest position in any system is rarely the most protected one. It is the most indispensable one. But every strategy has a weakness. Every architecture has a limit. And Cleopatra was about to encounter the first man in Rome who saw exactly what she was building. A man who wasn't interested in partnership. A man who wasn't interested in dependency. A man who wanted something much simpler: everything. His name was Octavian, and unlike Caesar, unlike Antony, he could not be woven into the system Cleopatra had spent 2 decades constructing. Every strategy eventually meets its test. For Cleopatra, that test arrived in the form of a young Roman named Octavian. History would remember him as Augustus, the first emperor of Rome, the man who transformed a republic into an empire. But before he became Augustus, he was simply the first man Cleopatra could not move. Caesar had needed her. Antony had needed her. Both men entered the system she built. Both became connected to Egypt's resources: its grain, its treasury, its legitimacy, its strategic position. They did not always understand the architecture, but they lived inside it. Octavian was different. He wasn't interested in joining the system. He wanted to own it. And that changes everything. Because a partnership can create dependency, ownership removes it. This is one of the most important lessons in power. A strategy succeeds only as long as the other side accepts the game. The moment they refuse the game, the strategy must change. Most people fail here. They keep using a method that worked yesterday, long after it has stopped working today. Cleopatra did not make that mistake. She saw the danger immediately, because she understood something many intelligent people never learn. The greatest threat is not an enemy you misunderstand. The greatest threat is an enemy who understands you completely. And Octavian understood her. He understood Egypt. He understood leverage. He understood the dependencies she had spent decades creating. The difference was that he had no intention of preserving them. Imagine the meeting. Alexandria, 30 BC. The city is surrounded. The war is over. Antony is defeated. Rome has won. Cleopatra enters the room carrying the same weapon she had carried her entire life. Perception, presence, psychological precision. For 2 decades, this had worked. She had influenced generals, negotiated alliances, maintained a kingdom against impossible odds. Now she sat across from a man who watched everything and revealed nothing. That silence must have been terrifying. Because strategists survive by reading people. And some people are difficult to read. Octavian was one of them, not because he was emotional, because he wasn't. Caesar wanted greatness, Antony wanted glory. Octavian wanted control. Those motivations sound similar. They are not. Greatness can be negotiated with. Glory can be influenced. Control rarely can. And somewhere during that meeting, Cleopatra understood. The architecture was finished, not because it had failed, because it had reached its limit. For 21 years, she had survived by becoming necessary. Now she faced a man willing to absorb Egypt entirely. A man who no longer wanted access to the system. A man who wanted the system itself. There was no leverage left, no dependency left to build, no alliance left to negotiate. Only one variable remained under her control: herself. And that leads to one of the most misunderstood moments in history. Most people view Cleopatra's death as a tragedy. Some view it as surrender. I think both interpretations miss something important, because throughout her life, Cleopatra had pursued one objective above all others: control over the terms of alliances, the terms of negotiations, the terms of perception, the terms of power. Now only one set of terms remained: the terms of her exit. Octavian wanted a spectacle, a defeated queen paraded through Rome, displayed as proof of his victory. A symbol, a trophy, the final chapter of a story he intended to write. Cleopatra refused. For the first time in her life, she could not control the empire. She could not control the outcome. She could not control the future. But she could still control one thing: the ending. And so she did. Whatever happened in those final hours, whether by asp, poison, or another method lost to history, the psychological meaning remains the same. She denied Octavian the one victory he wanted most: the public performance of her defeat. History remembers her death. What interests me more is the decision behind it, because the final act of Cleopatra's life was perfectly consistent with the rest of it. She understood a truth that many people spend their entire lives avoiding: when every advantage disappears, when every strategy reaches its limit, when every source of leverage is gone, the final question becomes, what do you still control? Cleopatra's answer was simple: not Rome, not Egypt, not the future, only the terms. And she protected them until the very end. That is why history remembers her. But it is not why history still studies her. Because her greatest lesson wasn't how to gain power. It was understanding exactly where power ends. And in the next chapter, we arrive at the question Cleopatra leaves behind for all of us. A question that has nothing to do with ancient Egypt, and everything to do with the rooms we walk into today. Most history documentaries end with a death. This one doesn't. Because Cleopatra's death is not the most interesting thing about her. The most interesting thing is the question her life leaves behind. For more than 2,000 years, people have argued about Cleopatra. Was she brilliant, manipulative, visionary, dangerous? History loves those debates, but they all miss the same thing. Because Cleopatra's greatest achievement was not keeping Egypt independent for 21 years. Her greatest achievement was understanding how power actually works, not how people talk about it, how it works. There is a difference. Most people think power belongs to the strongest person in the room. History rarely agrees. The strongest armies disappear. The richest nations collapse. The most powerful leaders eventually fall. But underneath every empire, every company, every institution, there are people, systems, and ideas holding everything together, and most of them are invisible. Cleopatra spent her life looking for those invisible structures, the things people depended on without noticing, the assumptions they never questioned, the resources they could not replace, the blind spots they never saw. That was her real talent, not influence, observation. And perhaps that is why her story feels strangely modern, because the world has changed. Human nature has not. Every office has its Caesars. Every institution has its Antonies. Every system has its dependencies. Every room has assumptions about who matters and who doesn't. And every room contains at least one person everyone is underestimating. The question is whether that person knows it. Because the people who change systems rarely begin by attacking them. They begin by understanding them. Cleopatra understood them better than almost anyone. Think about your own life, your career, your business, your relationships, your ambitions. Most people spend years asking the same question: how do I become more important? Cleopatra asked a different question: how do I become more necessary? Those questions sound similar. They are not. Importance depends on attention. Necessity survives without it. Importance can be taken away. Necessity is much harder to remove. That distinction may explain more success and failure than almost anything else. Which brings us back to the beginning, to a young girl in Alexandria, sitting in the largest library in the world, listening more than speaking, watching more than performing, learning how people think. Long before she ever met Caesar, long before she met Antony, long before she became queen, she was already studying the architecture, the invisible structures beneath visible power. And once you see those structures, you begin to notice them everywhere. So here is the question Cleopatra leaves behind. Not for Rome, not for Egypt, for you. If Cleopatra walked into the most important room in your life right now, what would she see? Would she see someone waiting to be recognized? Someone asking for permission? Someone hoping to be protected? Or would she see someone quietly building something others cannot afford to lose? Because Cleopatra understood a truth that survived her kingdom, a truth that survived Rome, a truth that survives every empire. The safest position is not being protected, it is being needed. And that leads to the final question, the question history cannot answer for you. If you disappeared tomorrow, what would stop working? Not your title, not your position, not the chair you sit in, you. What depends on you in a way that cannot be easily replaced? The answer to that question is closer to real power than most people will ever get. History called Cleopatra a seductress. Rome called her a threat. Perhaps both missed the point, because Cleopatra was neither. She was an architect of leverage, an architect of dependency, an architect of power, and 2,000 years later, we are still living inside systems built on the same principles she understood. Power shapes history. Human nature repeats it.